Hi, I'm Robin Birkin, an ex-corporate marketer turned online business owner. I took everything I knew and created a six-figure life coaching business in the margins between nap times and a 9-to-5, and I'm here to share with you how you can do the same. Tune in as I share the raw and unfiltered truths, big lessons, and practical tips to help you build and grow a sustainable bread-winning business online that is both peaceful and profitable. Here, we dive deep into all things online courses, funnels, audience growth, and so much more. If that sounds like the things you want to learn, then welcome to Signature Online Course Secrets. Let's go. Hi, and welcome to Signature Online Course Secrets. It is my pleasure to welcome another guest to the podcast. This is one of our mastermind clients, Nat Pickering, who is also a fellow Perth business owner. And Nat and I have kind of known each other in circles and things like that for several years. And it's just recently that she joined the mastermind. But if you don't know her, she is a naturopath who specializes in fertility and infertility. She's like booked out in Perth. So if you are on a trying to conceive journey, one of the naturopaths that you really need on your team is Nat. And everybody knows that. And that's why she's so popular, that she has also started really building and ramping up the online side of her business. And this is where we have started to work together. Nat, hi and welcome.
Hey, Robin. Thanks for having me on.
So, like I say, we've kind of known each other just through Perth business, through fertility, all of that stuff for quite some time now. And I feel like that's a pretty accurate description that your in-practice clinic is fairly consistently booked out.
Yeah, well, I've been in practice I've actually counted it up now and I feel very old. It's 28 years. And so we kind of expect it's going to be busy.
Yeah.
And it is, and I love it. But I've kind of topped out to my capacity in one-to-one, about 6 or 8 weeks booked out. And it was about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, I thought, right, it's time to start diversifying, getting another income stream. And that's when I kind of went, well, let's go online. I think I thought it was going to be easier than it actually was.
Don't we all?
Possibly because I didn't get very good support.
Right, shame.
So I did. I built my first program, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. And that first program was called Create Conception. And it was really heavy on coaching. And I got burnt out big time. So I got a bit scared of the whole thing and crept into my little corner and stayed back in my one-to-one coaching for some time as I kind of healed up and recovered. But then it's just such a great opportunity to reach so many more people when you're doing this online stuff. And I just I've got to get back into it again. And so I did. I changed my program. It's been through multiple metamorphoses. And initially I thought, right, there's going to be no coaching in this program. And then I went, oh, I don't like this much. So then I added coaching back in, but it's not anywhere near as intense as it was in my first iteration. Yeah, I've had some different coaches, but I've never had the sort of coaching that I have now received since working with yourself, Robin.
Oh, no, that makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
You're coming from Perth like me. There's just not many people who live in Perth. So when we're trying to build businesses and things like that, you know, when we have in-person services, that's cool. But if we're trying to expand, it just makes so much sense to do things online and grow beyond Perth, because not many people live in Perth and not many people live in Australia either.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually, when I'm launching and doing my ads and so on, I do, I include NZ and I include Canada and Ireland and the UK and America and so on. So I love that I can reach so many other people. And it's surprising, we always think, oh, well, us Aussies, we're always behind the 8 ball and we don't do things as well as or as quick as some of the other countries. But I tell you what, naturopathic support and training and access to supplements, good quality supplements, is actually very good here. And when you hear it with a lot of people struggling to get that sort of support overseas, quite surprising. So it reminds me not to think, well, I'm an Aussie and my practice is probably not as advanced as others. It's actually not the case when it comes to naturopathy. Yeah.
I love that. And so you came into the mastermind, like I said, you already had a course and a program. And I think so many of us who have courses and go through those iterations of what does this look like and what does delivery look like, it's almost like a rite of passage that we go through and we're like, now I'm going to over deliver and give all the things. And now I'm burnt out and I'm going to bring it back. They always evolve and morph into different iterations, don't they?
Mm, my gosh, absolutely. And I think that we all have different energy to bring to our online businesses. I think so many of us are doing, we're either mumming, we've only got part-time hours, or we're working in, 9 to 5s as well. So it can be tricky, can't it? Because you want to put so much energy into your online biz, but then you're like, well, I don't actually have all that much time. So it's about finding that balance. And I made a few mistakes on what I thought I was going to be able to execute. But I'm actually really happy with the program as it is now. So it's a kind of a hybrid version, where there's some group coaching available and there's some one-to-one available and so on. It fits right now for me, which has been good.
Yeah. And I think that's an important lesson in and of itself as well. Everyone's like, we've got names for all of these things, like this is group coaching and this is this and this is that. But actually, you get to combine whatever deliverables feel really good and really high value for you and package that accordingly.
Yeah.
What have been, as you've gone through and, shifted and changed and evolved your signature program, which is called Well Conceived, by the way. So we used to call our mastermind Well Conceived.
It's a bit confusing for a bit.
Totally different program to your program is all about, finding the root cause of what's going on, why you're not conceiving, and being able to essentially like support yourself in overcoming, lots of that yourself. So what have been some of the core like lessons or aha moments that you've had over those iterations of your program?
Some of the things that I kind of feel a bit regretful about is I didn't really pay quite enough attention to list building and list nurturing and staying steady with that. And I'm still could really do better with that. We've had a conversation not too long ago that my messaging has been very vanilla. It was boring as anything. And I'm in the process of trying to really find myself and find the way that I deliver info and nurture people and try to educate people online in a way that's a bit more interesting and a bit less humdrum and a bit less, oh, well, I could have found that on, Dr. Google and so on, because I think that that's such an important one. And the other one that I'm really still wrapping my head around, and this is something that you've been teaching me about as well, is this whole problem awareness and solution awareness. And I just was not, and I'm really still working on it. I was not bringing that into my social media, and I feel like it's really held me back. So I'm in the process of really trying to get my head wrapped around that. I think marketing, wow, you know what? There's a lot of learning to go yet. And I hear you rattle off these amazing thoughts. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can, that would have taken me hours to come up with something like that. But slowly. But again, it's that one person who can step back and see, what is this expression, the forest for the trees? Yeah, because I often get stuck too much down in the nitty gritty and I forget to look at the whole big picture, and I forget to look at what do potential new clients or customers actually need to hear. I tend to forget about that.
And I think sometimes we can overcomplicate it. I was just on a live this morning with a colleague and we were talking about this concept. So this is something I talk about in Launch Easy Life, in the mastermind. And messaging and content is just such a big part of what we do, that we take people on these aha moments through the process of finding out about us right through to them wanting to buy from us. So what someone needs to think, do, believe, understand at the point of just finding out about us is actually a little bit different to at the point of where they just go to work with us. And it's a bit of a process of leading people on those aha moments. And I find that it is something that I speak about more and more because it's so important, and it's so incredibly important in 2024 for us to be able to really clearly articulate and speak to those clients along the course of the buyer's journey. Now, you joined the mastermind, you had just come off a launch that was a bit like lackluster. And I love this for you because I joined the mastermind I'm part of people I think always think you join a mastermind when you're on the up and everything's going well and, I've reached the milestone that I wanted. But in actual fact, sometimes we join programs and we're like, actually, this is feeling really hard and I need to fix it. Whereas, so for me, I was like, I need to shut down like a giant portion of my revenue stream. And I'm not going to do that like on my own. So you just come off a launch that was very like, this is hard. We've worked together. We then tripled the enrollments in your next launch, which we did really quite quickly. I think that was within 2 months of joining the mastermind. But let's not talk about that. What I would love to talk about is the experience of feeling a lot more regulated during your launch. I feel as though, yes, we tripled the enrollments in that launch, but actually the real magic was in you being able to know the plan and how everything was going to play out and feel even keel and not derailed if things didn't go perfectly.
Yeah, as you referred to the launch that I had done before I joined the mastermind, I remember thinking to myself, I'm never doing this again. I never want to do this again. Launching sucks. I hate it.
Yeah.
And I thought about that a lot in that launch. And oh gosh, am I going to do this again? I've just put so much work into this program and I actually really like running it, but I hated launching. It was so stressful. And that's when I went, well, if I'm going to do this, I need support. And that's why I joined you in the mastermind. And I remember you saying something like, it doesn't need to feel that stressful. It actually doesn't need to feel. I'm like, really? Is that right? Okay. Well, I want to know how it doesn't need to feel that stressful. And I remember being quite resistant when you said to me, what are you doing? You know, these 3-day launches, perhaps that's part of the problem. And you'd said, might need to consider it longer, maybe a 7, maybe a 10, maybe even a 14. And I was super resistant to that initially, thinking, how will I maintain the energy? But that was so much better than trying to do and achieve everything in just the 3 days. It felt so much less pressure to be able to take that time. And I just felt a lot less stressed, a lot more relaxed. And it was a much better launch. And I was able to really enjoy the process. Yeah, so I'm kind of looking forward to the next one, actually, which is unusual.
You know, like I sit firmly in the camp of really enjoying live launches, which I feel is unusual for most people, but I love the momentum and the energy and the ability to have that momentum with rinse and repeat resources. So I'm probably a bit strange in that regard, but I think the more that we understand, like, what part does this play? What's the right thing to do here? How is this going to play out? You know, the more that we can enjoy the process.
Yeah. And I think also you can enjoy it more when you've got a little bit of confidence that somebody else who's got all that experience has had a look at it and gone, right, we need to work on this bit and keep that bit, and we need to completely scrap this bit. It just gave that sense of, okay, well, I've got it in place. It's all organised. Certainly there's a bit of work in the lead up to, but it is nice to kind of be in that space of, right, well, I've tackled things very methodically and very strategically. I like that strategy. For me, I always need to know, why am I doing something? I'm not very good at doing something just because it's supposed to be done now. I need to know what the big picture is. Yeah. So that feels good.
Yeah. And we started your time in the mastermind with a launch debrief. So we went through that past launch and we're like, all right, here are the things, you know, let's lengthen out the launch. Let's email everyone, not just everyone who had registered for the webinar, and made tweaks accordingly to be able to feel like we're having a much better launch. So you are now in pre-launch or about to enter pre-launch for your next launch. I've got to say, you're already a ninja at Facebook ads. So, you know, like when you came into the mastermind, I was like, oh, she's obviously worked with some people before. What are some of the things that you are taking along with you this launch? Some of the lessons, some of the mindset lessons, or, you know, when you go through a launch and you're like, I'm never doing that part again, but yes, this worked really well. What are some of the things that you're like, this is what we're taking into this next launch?
I think that some of the biggies will be reuse what you've already done. I'm still very much one woman showing this, and do need to get a VA at some point very soon. I do need to go back and have a look and see which were the Instagram posts that worked quite well. So I'm not doing everything from scratch again. So I'm definitely looking forward to not having to do it all from scratch. It will be a slightly different theme, but the webinar will be a little bit different. So I feel like I can reuse. So definitely reuse biggie that I'm going to be looking forward to. Definitely going to stay with the 10-day car to open. I would not go back to a 3-day. I really feel like, and I know you will have spoken about this multiple times before on the podcast, but 2024 is very different selling than what it was 2021, 2022, you know, very different. People are so much more savvy. They want to know so much more about who are you and what am I really going to get out of this program. I think it was a bit easier to sell back before. I mean, I'm no expert, but 100%. It seemed like it was easier. Yeah.
I was doing like lots of 3 and 5 day launches back in 2024, and I'm not averse to a flash sale, But I think that your market needs to be super warm, and a 3-day flash sale is for people who are launching their product all the time to a warm audience who already has been through these webinars and live launches and things like that before. People are no longer buying, I find, on momentum, like hype. There's not that much hype. It's more very considered.
Very considered, yeah. And that's another thing that I've learned since joining the mastermind is you've really got to talk to people. There are so many different people who are at different stages of, well, I think you would call it their buyer's journey, but different stages in their own lives and the way they need to hear this information. And I'm always wary of, God, they've heard that twice before. I don't want to go on about that, but they need to keep on hearing it and perhaps some different angles.
Yeah,
I think that's my other biggie is don't be afraid of reiterating or, repeating myself, because there's a very good chance that, 3 and 5 have never heard me say that before. So I'm just going to jump into that one a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And it used to be, like I'm a marketing grandma. When I was at university more than 20 years ago, they used to say someone needs to hear your message 7 times. And I think the, sheer bombardment that we have in today's day and age, it's like 21 now. And Google did a research study that showed before someone needs to buy your product or service, they need to, this is where I'm going to mess it up. They need to hear about the thing 7 times over 11 pieces of content that would take them 4 hours to consume. Something along those lines.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, people really need a lot more information. They need to know about you. They need to have the core messaging as part of your launch repeat in their brain several times. There's one question I've been asked more than anything else, and it's this. Robin, how do you get so much done in such a short period of time? Because I've never had the luxury of being able to work in my business and hustle those 40 to 60 hour weeks. It's all been between nap times, a 9 to 5 or the school run. And from my 2nd year in business and ever since, we've had 6-figure plus years. So this is it. I've put together for you my entire weekly work schedule, my to-do list, and everything I do in my business to help give you the tips, insights, and strategies to help you thrive as a business owner in part-time hours. It's called 16-Hour CEO, and it's a value-packed PDF that takes you behind the scenes in my business. Want a copy? It is totally free, and it's at launcheasylife.com/CEO. That's launcheasylife.com/CEO. All right, let's dive back into the episode. So, as a business owner within health and wellness, I've come across a lot of naturopaths, nutritionists, therapists who struggle to really charge what I would say is a sustainable fee. Have you wrestled at all over the course of your course journey with how much to charge for your signature program and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely, hugely. And I think sometimes you talk to different people about them, and there might be people who don't do any online biz stuff, and they're like, well, I'm going to charge that much. And then you say the same conversation with somebody else, and they're like, oh, that's way too cheap. So I think it's really hard to find the right price point. And then you've got, for me anyway, I've got the whole, well, I also do offer one-to-one services. And so I need to kind of think about, well, what is a one-to-one consultation? Where does that sit versus where does, paying for a package sit? So I find that really tricky. And I have, over the years, multiple times put up my prices, and it's always a bit squeamish. And there are some times where somebody proposes, you should go up to this price. And I've just gone, no, I'm just not going to go up that high. I don't feel good about it. It's a difficult point. And I think that it's a really good idea to have some support and some coaching around what is the right point. But I feel like you've got to feel intuitively, okay, yes, it feels a bit uncomfortable, but I'm worth this. Yeah.
And I love that you say, yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable, because it doesn't always feel like, I wrestle with this concept of people have a saying, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And I'm like, not every decision, or actually very rarely the decisions that I make are like, every single cell in my body is like, yes, this feels great, especially when it's around pricing. Sometimes it feels just slightly uncomfortable, but also inevitable. Like, I literally am not going to have a sustainable business or be able to grow or be able to pay myself unless, or deliver this service well, unless I can charge that fee. But it doesn't always feel like, oh yes, every cell in my body is like, This is great.
Yeah, your brain might feel good, but your tummy does not feel good.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What have been some of the core lessons that you've learned or tips that you have for anyone who, have a practice and is looking to build an online arm of their business? What are some of the things that you've learned or tips that you have around that?
I think that you really got to build out your social media presence and build out your email list as early as you can in the journey, because if you think you're going to create a program and then launch it and somebody's going to pay attention to it and you've hardly got any presence online, unfortunately, you get really disappointed because it just doesn't work well. So I think you've got to start that off pretty early, and building your list organically, I don't really feel like that's very sustainable. Or, well, I mean, if you've got heaps of time, yeah, great. You can, shred out 4 reels a day. I didn't have that time. So from early days, I've been pay for Facebook ads that, that build into a funnel, into an opt-in, and building my email list. I'm getting better and better at communicating with the said email list. So I think I would definitely do that at the beginning. I think you also have to have that willingness to be a rank beginner, because most of us are good at what we already do, but then we want to try and be, we're good at being a naturopath and we're good at sitting down and, consulting and creating treatment plans and things like that. But when it comes to creating a successful online business, you've got to be willing to start from the very beginning and make a bunch of mistakes, and then hopefully find somebody who's going to give you good guidance. And I think if you don't do that, it makes it really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hear in what you're saying, which is very much like me, you just would rather have the shortcut. Like whenever I hear someone say, I've built all of my business all organically, I literally cannot help but think in my head, like the comeback is, that sounds like a lot of hard work and really, really slow.
Yes. Really hard work and really, really slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also in terms of, like the way that you're speaking in this podcast, you're like, you know what? Like I came off a really lackluster launch and I knew that I just needed to invest with someone to show me how to do that. You're like, you know what? I knew I needed to build my email list. So I was like, it's got to be, meta ads. How do you, and I really see this as being the difference between someone who has a jobby and someone who is like a CEO in their business, that they're like, well, if I'm going to leapfrog to the next level in revenue or to elevate to the next level of business, this is the time or cash investment that it's going to require. How do you, I guess, vision cast to the return on investment for different investments that you've made? Do you have any kind of mindsets that you've had to navigate, or have you always just been like, this is what the next step requires?
Oh yeah, huge mindsets to navigate, because, self-worth comes in here, and then guilt. What if I spend a whole bunch of money and we don't make any money back? And I have to say to my husband, oh, sorry, honey, but we didn't make much money this quarter because I went and splurged big time and it didn't pay off. When I have made these investments, I've always been thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to make that investment, how am I going to make the money back? What is the way that I can minimize the risk? So when I do Facebook ads, early days, I created the opt-ins that did have the tripwire. So it does quite well, helped pay that off. When I decided to invest into, coaching and so on, I'm always thinking, okay, well, how's that going to look in the finances? How am I going to pay that off? And I tend to be I'm a bit risk averse, and I don't like to be too vulnerable financially. So I like to think, well, how are you going to pay that extra investment off? And so I usually come up with something. And in this case, I'm like, okay, well, you've got this course, slice a bit of it off, hybridize what you're doing in clinic. And because I can't see my patients every 3 weeks like I used to initially. Now I give them some online learning, which is a mini slice of my program. And that helps me to be able to pay these investments, because I'm earning that extra money, and it helps me to feel more comfortable into making that next step. Again, I'm a bit of a risk averse little bunny, and I like to know how it's all going to pay out financially in the end.
Yep. I'm a bit of a leaper. Like I'll be like, you know what? It's just not going to happen otherwise. Let's roll the dice. It always pans out. But what I find interesting and smart, because I do the same thing, is I will go into investments containers. So whatever it is, whether it's investing in a VA, whether it's spending more time on a launch process, like I had the 2-day stay at a hotel not that long ago, whether it's investing in a container, I too also think to myself, what is the return on investment and how am I going to get a really good return on investment? And it's also kind of like a check yourself moment that I'm like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be full steam ahead. Like, let's soak up my money's worth.
Absolutely, because you'd feel like you'd let yourself down too if you made this investment and then you kind of half-assed it the whole way along and you only put a little bit of time in and you didn't put any effort in. Oh my gosh, you get to the end and you think, well, that wasn't a very smart investment. Whose fault was it? Only my own. So I'm a bit of a one. If I'm going to do it, I do it full steam.
Yep. And I like credit to you. I feel like you use the container in the way that it's meant to be used. What for you have been the most valuable parts of the mastermind or things that might be different too? Because I know that you must have invested before because I can see some of the skills that you've brought across. This particular experience, like I try to say to people, I feel like this is not like an experience you've joined before. What has been different and valuable to you in joining Peace and Profit?
I feel that one of the things that is super valuable is that we have the Slack channel. And if I'm at a struggle point, I don't have to wait 2 weeks to go, Robin, I need help. Because for me, when I'm doing my work, it's on my 2 days off, non-clinic work, and I'm just trying to thrash it out. And I can pop my question up and, you'll get on there and you'll answer it within the next 24 to 48 hours. Like, right, great, move on to the next thing. Instead of being stuck in overwhelm or, some level of fear of, oh my gosh, is it the right thing? Or what do I do here? I get the answer and I get it quick and it's specific to me. And I feel like that's a biggie. That's been a really biggie for me because I can procrastinate a bit and it helps me to, if I get the answer, all right, keep going, just keep going. That's one of the biggest things for me is the Slack channel.
And it's really hard to describe, but it's very different to like a Facebook group. It's just not the same.
So I hate Facebook groups. They're annoying. I can't find anything. Yeah.
And I feel like part of that is the way that we lay it out in Slack.
Yeah, so you've got your different channels. So if you're like, oh, I've got a tech issue here or I need a coaching question answered, it's easier to also go back because sometimes you get your answer and you're like, okay, well, I've got 2 days of clinic work. There's no way I can do anything about it, but I know where I can go find it with ease.
Yep.
Love it.
So in terms of your signature program, in terms of your trajectory and what needs to happen for you to get to the next step, do you feel like you have a clear path to what needs to happen, how your launches will work, etc.?
I think that because I've got the 2 arms, I've got the live launch and I've got Evergreen. Evergreen's definitely going to need some more tweaking because it's not performing like I need it to. So I do need to figure out a timeline on when that's going to get a lot of attention because my gosh, that gets a bit complicated. Evergreen is not easy. This business about Evergreen being easy. Who said that?
100%.
That's not even true.
It's like level 10.
Yeah, complexity.
I'm not anti-Evergreen. I just feel like it's the much more advanced option.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll keep going with my live launching and I'm hoping to increase my profits about 25% because I feel like there's scope for that. Yeah, and that I'll either do that 3 or 4 times a year, but I need to figure out what's not going well enough in my Evergreen so that it can be a stronger performer. I think all that work, it needs to be a better performer.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of thinking about.
Yep, I love that. So for any other naturopaths here, whether they're in Australia or the US or Canada or wherever it may be, if they're currently stuck in clinic and wanting to stab their eyes with a pencil and say, like, I just feel like there's scope for me to reduce my clinic time with something online. You've already spoken to some of this, like you need to have a social media presence and an email list. Do you have any advice for naturopaths or nutritionists who want to reduce their in-clinic time?
There's a couple of young naturopaths that I work with in a clinic that I work with here in Perth. And what we often chat about is that I really feel like niching and, really carving out something that you're particularly great at and really well known for in your one-to-one is a great way to get that started because I think then you've really got great foundations of your process. And I think there just has to be a process, a signature process for you to be able to really sell things like programs online. So I always talk to them about, find your passion pretty early. And I think it's a really good, a generalist, there's a place for a generalist, but I also feel like you can't be excellent at everything. And I don't know, I just feel like it's exhausting trying to be excellent at everything. if I get a client and they've got issues that I feel like, you know, this is not that I don't do excellent at this, I will always refer them on. If it's something basic, you know, it's a gut thing and it's something basic, I can deal with it. It's not a problem. But if it's really severe, I'll say, look, let's get you started. But I feel like you'll be better with someone else. I don't feel like you can be excellent at everything within naturopathy.
Within anything, really.
No, you kind of niche down and you find your area of specialization. And I think I also feel like that makes your messaging, even though I'm a rank beginner on my messaging, I think that makes it easier to create yourself a little space, you know, social media and so on. If you have niche a lot, I would definitely say to do that. And I think that one-to-one consulting can be really exhausting, you know, and I'm just jumping on Facebook groups and things like that, which is great to have for lots of other naturopaths and nutritionists, just hearing what the exhaustion that a lot of people are going through because they are having to do 5 days a week, one-to-one, not charging enough, working all hours, trying to get treatment plans organized. Oh my gosh, that is just burnout. That's burnout material. Yeah. So I think it's really nice to come into quite a different space and use different muscles to figure out how to create another income stream for yourself. And I think it's a really great tool to do.
Yeah. And when you niche as well, you know, it's like, let's say I need back surgery. I'm not going to go to a generalist doctor to work on my back. So when you then go to someone who is a specialist in their industry, they get to charge more. But also in terms of that in-clinic time, because it's never just what's in clinic, is it? It's like the treatment plan and extra resources and this and that. When you're not niching, then you're like, one day I'm doing PCOS, the next day I'm doing someone who has joint pain for rheumatoid arthritis. And then like everything is different. Whereas when you're like, let's say the naturopath for PCOS, you can start to rinse and repeat a little bit more and charge more. Win-win.
And you become that much more of an expert because you've been able to narrow down your research and what success rates am I getting here when I do this? I feel like, and you also attract other colleagues who work in your space. So you're bouncing ideas off one another and you become a lot more expert in that particular space.
Yeah.
And then your clients benefit from that because you weren't also trying to be an expert in, let's say, rheumatoid arthritis. At the same time, maybe it takes a bigger brain than mine, or somebody who doesn't have kids or a FIFO husband and things like that. Like you got more time. You know, I love my research, but there's a limit to how much we can do.
100%. I love that so much. All right, we are going to do a speed round. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. But before we say that, if for anyone out there who would love to connect with you, to learn more, to work with you, tell us all of the links and all of the great stuff that you do.
Yeah, sure. So my website, www.nataliepickering.com, and I've got lots of great fertility resources on there. And you can find how to book in with me one-to-one there. And you can also find my programs on there. And on Instagram, I'm NataliePickering_fertility.
Love that. All right. Shall we rock on with a speed round? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. As we wrap up today, is there a great book you recommend everyone reads?
I actually like The Optimized Woman.
Oh.
So the author is Miranda Gray. This book was written a long time ago, and you'll be a bit familiar with the idea that the secret to women's wellness and entrepreneurial success and relationship success is that working with your cycle. Because, oh my gosh, do we not have huge changes in things like our abilities and our skills at one point of our cycle that are completely absent at another point of our cycle? So I feel like if you do that and you maintain some level of awareness with that, you will excel. You will find things flow so much better. So I love that book, The Optimized Woman. Yeah.
I love that. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
So I had to dig hard to find my quote because I had it and I'm like, who said this quote? And it's a really old one. This is by Judy Garland. Like was she, right? We're talking about the 1950s. So she said, always be a first-rate version of yourself instead of a second-rate version of somebody else. And I'm like, whoa, that cuts to the quick, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
That comparisonitis and I love it.
100%. Yeah. For like 3 years, instead of picking a word for the year, I had a song, which was Surfing by Kid Cudi, which is all about surfing your own wave. Do you have a tip that's changed your life? Like if you're like, hey, everybody, you should know about this. What is it?
This one was a biggie from a previous coach that I had. And I was really stuck in overwhelm. And it was like, I couldn't move because the project was too big. And she's like, you just got to break it down into small tasks just break that down into small tasks and then put a time limit on that one small task. I'm like, oh, I can do this. It's 3 o'clock. I've got until I got to leave and pick up the kids, and I've got a sales page to write. Well, I'm just going to write this section of the sales page. I'm like, oh, this is actually working. So yeah, break down the big task into small things, and then all of a sudden it feels like I can do it.
Yes, you can always do like one thing, right?
One thing.
Lastly, if you had one message to leave everyone with today after today's chat, what would it be?
That would be, stop leaving it till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Stop leaving it till, next week or next year, because if you don't start it, you're never going to get there. So even though it's scary, do it anyway.
I love that. Nat, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you in the mastermind. And it's been lovely hearing your wisdom, all of your tips and insights into the behind the scenes of your business. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for us this week. I cannot wait to share more incredible goodness with you next week on the podcast. Until then, we'll see you then. Another episode on the books. If you'd like to continue the conversation and get more super savable tips, come and find me on Instagram at Robin Birkin. Otherwise, make sure you're subscribed, and I can't wait to see you next week.